It's time to talk about the important issues for the natural state, and there's only one place to turn for that. Opportunity Arkansas's Nic Horton. You can find Nic's work at opportunityarkansas.org.
And welcome back to First News, just about 20 minutes in front of 8 o'clock on your Wednesday, the 15th of January. Now joining us to talk about the start of the new legislative session here in our state is Nic Horton, the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas. Nic, welcome back to the show. How you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm here. That's all I can say this morning.
Has it already been a long session for you?
It's day 3. It feels like about day 30, but yeah, we're hanging in there.
Nice. Well, the coverage has been outstanding. I read this week's edition of Non-Debatable already, and it seems like there's a lot going on. And so yesterday, on day 2 of the legislative session here in Arkansas, our governor gave the State of the State address, and so she talked about education initiatives. Talked about some cost of living aspects for us as well. What did you think of the speech? Anything that what you heard that you took from that?
Well, yeah, a lot of thoughts. I mean, certainly stylistically, we've got a governor who, has served as a White House press secretary and always gives a really strong speech and a really clear message about what her priorities are and why she believes they're going to be good for the people of Arkansas. A lot of the themes, I think, were not overly surprising in terms of she highlighted a lot of things that she's done and championed in the first 2 years, a lot of which we've been very supportive of and I think have clearly been good for the people of Arkansas when it comes to education freedom and the LEARNS Act, 3 rounds of income tax cuts, and putting more money back in the hardworking pockets of hardworking Arkansans and trying to reduce the cost of living, and public safety and making sure that we don't have this revolving door of our state prisons anymore, and that we're putting public safety first in terms of our corrections policy and fixing our broken parole system. So she spent some time rehashing, for lack of a better term, and just recapping some of that and the success that we've had. And then she built the case for where we're going next and where she sees the priorities being in this session, but also I think over the next 2 years. And a lot of it, frankly, is a continuation, extension of a lot of those priorities. So we've done K through 12 education. Now she wants to turn her attention to higher ed and do some things there to make the pathway from K through 12 education to secondary education easier for folks that want to pursue that, whether that's VOTEC, community college, 4-year schools, and I think some good ideas to broaden those pathways and make it easier for folks to get those advanced degrees if they want and need them. Some additional things on public safety, mostly relating to phones in schools and taking phones out of schools during the school day. Some social media, additional social media policies, it sounds like, potentially to try to keep kids safe from online dangers, which we certainly know is a big problem. And then continuing to reduce the cost of living, which, income tax is certainly a big part of, but frankly, I was very excited. Probably my biggest takeaway from the speech was to hear her say, not only should we get rid of our grocery tax, but we are going to get rid of our grocery tax in this legislative session. And as you know, Toby, that's something that we've been advocating for a couple of years now and trying to bring to the forefront. And we're really excited to hear, assuming that there was going to be legislation on that already, but excited to hear that we can expect to have the governor's support for that. And we can finally say, we're not going to tax groceries. This is a tax that affects low-income Arkansans more than the others. And frankly, it's just unnecessary. It's a headache for local business owners to have to administer. And we're going to take another step towards simplifying our tax code. So stylistically, I thought it was really strong. Substantively, there weren't really any big surprises, I think, but it sounds like overall a continuation of some of the good policies that we've seen. And it sounds like good things ahead for the state of Arkansas overall.
Now, Nic, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you know this or not, but when we talk about getting rid of the grocery tax, has anyone put out numbers on what that would look like? Like what that, if we're using, like, say, a family of 4, I mean, does that put $40 back in my pocket each year? Does that put $400 back in my pocket each year? $4,000? I mean, do we know what type of savings that is when it comes to getting rid of the grocery tax?
Yeah, that's a good question. We could probably do some back of the envelope math on that. That may be something we try to do
Yeah.
at Opportunity Arkansas. I will say, look, I mean, to the legislature's credit, although a lot of this was done years and years ago, before most of the current folks were there, we have been slowly chipping away at our state income tax, and
Yeah.
so, or sorry, our grocery tax, and so it's not a massive amount of money. I don't think you're going to see a massive change in your grocery bill overnight, but it is just one more thing. And
That's
frankly,
right.
I think that lends the case to going ahead and getting rid of it even more. Because when you look at, like, if you're a business owner that owns a grocery store or a convenience store, and you've got to figure out all of these different types of food are taxed differently. Prepared food is taxed differently. Rotisserie chicken is taxed differently in a local grocery store than a bag of frozen chicken
Right.
is taxed. You've got to figure all that out, and you've got to have IT specialists come in and code your point of sale systems to figure out how to account for all of that, and all of that headache for about $8 million, $9 million in revenue to the state.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In terms of the grocery tax. It's not even worth the headache. And it's just, we're one of the only states left that have it. And it's just, again, someone could say, well, $8 million, why should we worry about that? But at some point it is the principle of the thing, and
Yeah.
it's about simplifying this for the people of Arkansas and for entrepreneurs. So I wish I could tell you, oh, it's going to save you $300 a year on your groceries. It's probably not, but it is one more thing that we can do at the state level to fight back on inflation and try to simplify this for Arkansans and for businesses.
Well, one thing that you did point out, no matter what that number is that it does affect lower income Arkansans more than others. Getting that, and so it'll benefit lower income Arkansans more than others as well when this tax goes away. And so that in a whole is a good thing. As we're talking with Nic Horton, the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas this morning. Early on here in the session, in the first couple of days, a lot of representatives and senators have been named to chair different committees. Did that all go as planned? Did any of the assignments stick out to you in a good way or a bad way on the committee assignments, especially for chairs of the committees?
Oh boy, that's a great question, Toby.
Whenever I get that to start an answer, I know that I've hit on the wrong one.
Listen, let me be clear first and say I could not be more excited. I don't know if I've ever been more excited to see a committee chair than seeing Representative Keith Brooks named to chair the House Education Committee.
Yeah.
He's a guy who represents a large part of Little Rock and your listening area there.
Mm-hmm.
He was the House sponsor of the LEARNS Act. There's no one in the state of Arkansas, particularly no one in the country, that cares more about empowering parents and making sure parents are in charge of their decisions for how they're going to educate their kids, making sure that they have resources, their tax dollars to be able to do that, and making sure, by the way, that schools and families are protected from massive state oversight or the state trying to come in and overregulate and audit and be all up in their business just because they tried to decided to educate their kids differently. He is an unbelievable advocate and defender of education freedom in every form. So it is absolutely tremendous news to see him taking the helm of that committee, and his vice chair as well, Representative Britt McKenzie. I could say the same thing for him in all of those regards. And so that is exceptionally good news. And I think going into this legislative session, we've all been, coming out of the Education Rights Amendment fight and all of these other attacks that we've expected. And there's going to be debate. We've already seen legislation filed to end the Education Freedom Program entirely. That there is going to be debate over this, and I'm more confident than ever that the people of Arkansas are going to be able to retain that program, and we're going to go universal next year, and it's going to continue to change the direction of our state. So I'm very excited about that. Some of the other picks on the House side, for your listeners, just so they know, I mean, those were announced just this week on Monday from the House floor. We had no idea who the House committee chairs were going to be until the first day of session. I think that's a a really bad way to do this. I mean, the Senate decided in November, December who their Senate chairs were going to be. You're giving members time to prepare for session, which they already have a very limited amount of time to do that. but giving them some notice, giving the public some notice so that folks know, like, oh, okay, this is who's going to be the chair and the vice chair, and the dynamics that that's going to bring about and what that's going to mean for different pieces of legislation. I really don't like, and they didn't used to do it this way. From my recollection, last session was the first time that they held them so close to the vest.
Right.
And I remember talking to people who were named chairs and vice chairs, and they said, I just found out. And I'm like, what do you mean you just found out? They're like, I just found out at the same time you did, like on the House floor when it was announced.
Right.
And I don't know that that's entirely how it played out this time. The chairs may have known in advance, but the public did not. And I just think, I mean, that seems like a small thing, but I think in terms of increasing public participation and transparency in this process, which is already very chaotic and very opaque by the nature of that, it's a small thing. Some of the picks, I'll just be honest, since you asked the question, I'm underwhelmed. You've got a handful of folks who, let's be honest, like they were elected as Democrats and have switched parties now,
right,
and are now Republicans. I will give kudos to the speaker, who I think a lot of personally, and I think he's going to do a good job. But he did not pick any like currently standing Democrats to lead any of these committees, which is a big deal. That is something that has been a struggle as we've grown into a supermajority. Previous leadership has kind of insisted on letting Democrats have chairs and vice chairs and having some seat at the table and giving them some representation in leadership. And there's been a lot of contention about that because there's 82, 81 Republicans in the House. The people have said pretty clearly that they want conservative Republicans leading the state. Why are we still giving Democrats these platforms in that way? And so that's a good change. But it's got around it a little bit by appointing some people that were Democrats just a few years ago, that are now wearing Republican jerseys. And look, we'll give them a chance. I'm hopeful that with the governor's leadership and really strong leadership in the Senate, that we're going to have a good session. There's going to be some really good things that are done. And frankly, Toby, if I'm being just really honest with your listeners and you, my hope for this session is just nothing really horrible happens. I mean, I think if we get out of session and we still have a really strong education freedom program, and we've protected income tax cuts and the path forward for more income tax cuts, and we've protected the Protect Arkansas Act and some of the major changes that we've made in the last few years, that's going to be a really good legislative session, and I'm hopeful that that's where we're headed.
Well, and of course, if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what goes on through this session, you need to sign up for the non-debatable newsletter that Opportunity Arkansas puts together. You can go to nondebatable.com and sign up. In fact, right when you go to the website, it's right there on the front page, nondebatable.com, and you can get signed up for that. It'll land in your email inbox every time they put it out, which is not, they don't spam you. So it's definitely a good read and has everything that's going on as we go through this session. So make sure to get signed up for that. But and of course, you can also check out opportunityarkansas.org is the other website to be checking out as we go through this session. But Nick, we always appreciate you stopping by the show, and we of course will do it again next week. But hopefully you get some sleep through this session at some point. But nonetheless, appreciate your coverage of it.
As my grandfather says, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yep, so that's a good way to look at it, man.
Plenty of time for that.
All right, Nick. Well, have a good rest of the week, and we'll catch up next Wednesday.
All right.